Hello, everyone. Welcome back to I See What You're Saying, the Disciplined Listening Podcast. I'm Michael Reddington, and today it is my pleasure to introduce our next guest, Joy Weaver. Joy is an etiquette expert, and she is dedicated to teaching people how to polish their personal and professional skills. She has been featured in ABC's Good Morning Texas, The View, and in Southern Living. She's author of the book Socially Savvy, and she has been certified by the Protocol School of Washington, D.C., as well as Letitia Baldridge, who was Jackie Kennedy's chief of staff. I'm really excited to share this conversation with everybody as we all learn, and I continue to learn, how proper etiquette can have such an enormous impact on our personal and professional relationships. I thank you all for being here to join the conversation today again, as we get into topics like how should we be pursuing excellence in all things? How the little things we do can create much bigger opportunities for us. How we can leverage proper etiquette to build personal and professional relationships, and even getting into the details of the proper way to make introductions, how to appropriately wear our name tags, considerations for how we dress as we go to different events, some considerations for how we talk to others personally and professionally, and even how and where we sit and how we dine at professional events and in our personal and social events as well. Joy has so many great ideas to share that we can apply in all facets of our life, and I'm very excited to share them with you all. So again, thank you for being here today. Before we dive in, let's thank our sponsors. First, we have Utensil. If you've ever realized the importance of developing the skill set to recognize what people are likely thinking or feeling at any point in time by accurately evaluating shifts in their facial expressions and nonverbal communication for indications of emotional changes, then you need to head over to humantel.com. Check out their research, check out their articles, and then choose the training program that you feel best fits your situation. And when you choose it, please enter the code INQUASIVE25 for 25% off of your best-in-class online training. I've taken all the training programs myself. I highly recommend them. Go check them out and get started at humantel.com. For the professional interviewers in the room, head over to certifiedinterviewer.com. That's where you'll learn more about the International Association of Interviewers. What's it take to join at the individual and group level? How can you contribute and add value to the organization? What online and in-person education opportunities are available? What resource support tools are available? Networking opportunities, so much more is available at certifiedinterviewer.com. And you heard it there. That's also where you learn more about the Certified Forensic Interviewer designation. What does it take to qualify? How do you prepare and pass the exam? Once you do, what can it mean for your career? And so much more. Learn it all at certifiedyinterviewer.com. And while you're online, please check out inquasive.com. That's where you can learn more about the programs our clients ask us to custom facilitate for their senior leaders, their sales team, their negotiators, their HR team, and more, to teach them the skills, perspectives, and techniques necessary to encourage people to share the everyday confessions that unlock all of our high-value personal and professional conversations. All that and more at inquasive.com. Thank you again for being here for another week and another great conversation. So now, without further ado, Joy Weaver. Hello, Joy. How are you? It has been way too long since we've seen each other.
Way too long. It is wonderful to see you, Mike. I'm thrilled.
Well, thank you so much for being here today. I can't wait for the conversation. And I do have to say, before we get started, that you are responsible for many, many, many laughs from my friends. Because when anybody I grew up with or spent any amount of time with heard that I had been through multiple etiquette training classes, I think the first thing they wanted to do was write like apology letters or send like condolence cards to you. But thank you for helping me put a little bit of polish on the roughest of stones that I have been for most of my life. I appreciate it.
Oh, Mike, it's my pleasure. And we had so much fun doing that together. It was like we were on tour together.
It was.
Here we go on the road
Yeah.
again, and then to the next stop and the next stop. And so, yeah, I think about that so much about how we really truly changed the world and our own gifting. I mean, we couldn't have been more different, but
No.
yet we were on the road with this company, and that's just the way it worked. And I learned so much from you. And I'm thrilled to know that you are still using the tips that you learned from my sessions.
I am. And we were just talking before we got on. I was doing so this week when I sat down at a table at a location that you would normally never find me at. And I got to look at all the knives and forks and spoons and glasses and everything in front of me and say, oh, I know where to sit. I know which one to pick up. I know how to hold it. I know how to do all this stuff. Instead of, the kid from New Hampshire that just would have used both hands.
Yeah, that is the story that I hear all the time. I had no idea that I didn't know what I didn't know. And then I sat down and someone said, which fork is mine? Which glass is mine? And they're like, I know this. So I was like, how in the world did you know that? And that's how I get quite a bit of business is, hey, if you can polish that person, I need you to come polish me. Let's do this at my organization. And that's how it works.
Yeah, I'm a testament to that. And you're right. It's funny. I kind of never thought of it, or I hadn't thought about it that way in a long time. We kind of were on the road together for a good period of time, going from location to location. And when you said on the road together, it reminded me of that time we almost run off the road on a bridge over the Mississippi River. So yeah,
Oh, so many memories.
yeah,
So
those were some good times. But I'm sure people just didn't log in today to listen to us have story time. We should find another time to do that. Now they can just picture what it would have looked like floating upside down in a rental car in the Mississippi River had that 18-wheeler not course corrected. But I did. I learned a ton from you. I learned a ton working with you. So many great experiences. But there was one quote that you had that I would love to start this conversation with, because especially with what we were teaching leadership at the time, and we were working with leadership teams together at the time. So I felt like this quote not only fit perfectly into what we were teaching together at the time, but also is just a great reference point for life in general. And if I get this quote wrong a little bit, correct me, of course, but I believe it went something along the lines, we should judge our success not by what we achieve, but by the gap between what we achieve and what we're capable of achieving. And if I'm in the right ballpark, I'd love for you to expand on that.
yes, capable of doing. So comparing ourselves with others is the thief of joy. We never look over there and go, oh, well, look what they're doing. Well, that's because that's not what I'm called to do. I'm called to be the very best that I can be. And so I am never saying I should be doing what they're doing. I'm supposed to be doing what I'm capable of doing and doing that with excellence. Well, how do you know what you don't know? You just don't know. But until you take the opportunity to learn from leadership classes like yours, leadership classes like mine, then you can excel. And then you have no excuse because then you can say, how do you know what you don't know? But you know. And then you can start practicing. And then practice makes perfect. And the more you practice, we all know that if you practice something for 21 days, you've got it down. It becomes a habit.
And that quote, like I said, has just stayed with me. And also, I use it as a frame of reference with my son, who can do something very well. And of course, he's very young. So I'm going to make sure he doesn't hear it as, Dad, you don't think I'm good? No, I actually think you're better. And so now, how do we continue to work to close that gap? So I still use that as a reference, not only with clients that I work with, but even with my son as well. And there's something else that I believe was in your book, and I heard you say when you were in front of the room multiple times, that the situations you're in don't really matter. It's how you handle them that
And
matters. And I would love for you to kind of jump into that a little bit too. We all find ourselves, sometimes maybe we created an unfortunate situation, guilty. Sometimes we just find ourselves in one that happened for us. But if you could talk through your perspective, why is it so important in how we handle it? And what are some of the best reference points for how we handle those tough situations?
That's a great question because, the house is on fire. Instead of running through the house screaming, we have to have enough about us to pick up the phone and call the fire department. When they answer, we don't say, there's a fire. And they say, where? And you say in the kitchen and hang up. We have to, how we handle the situation. We have to know who we are, our address, and get them there to put out the fire. So here's the thing about it. When we're looking at a situation, we have to be able to think beyond that moment and look down the road and get a visual of how we want it to turn out. That's what's so important about handling the situation. We never look at what's right before us. We look ahead, and that's how we come up with our answer.
And as you say that, I'm having a flashback to sitting in a big room with like 50 chairs in it or something like that, watching you up front. And didn't I hear you say something along the lines of don't make a permanent decision in a temporary situation, something like that? And I feel like that's the perfect analogy to what you just said. Don't just scream and run. Think about, what am I supposed to do next? How do I use this negative opportunity to set up future success, as
Yeah.
opposed to just being enveloped by emotion at the moment?
Man, you absorb a lot. Thank you so much for remembering this. So, yes, we always want to think of excellence first. And so, if we can, again, have a vision of what's ahead of us and not make that decision on an emotion or something that has happened to us so much of the time, not just women, but men as well. It could be anger issues. It could be something that happened in the past, and they're like, oh, this is the perfect time to get back. This is it. I'm not going to allow this to happen. I have got to make this right. This is my perfect time. That's not it at all. Forget our emotions. We forget our emotions and we think about excellence, excellence in all things. We set the example, and we're setting the example for everyone that is looking at us. Who is that? All internal, all external customers, the people that work for us, the people that work with us, our families. We have to be people of integrity. And so we cannot run our lives on emotion. If we run our lives on emotion, guess what? We will be swaying this way today and swaying this way tomorrow. And this is how I feel. That is no way to set an example. And so when you look at life in general, I mean, we are communicating every day, all the time, in all that we do. And we have to be able to think again past our nose, think past the situation, and what would we like for the ultimate outcome to be. And, we talk about our families, we talk about the people we work with, they're all looking to see. And I was in that stage of life looking up to see how leaders made decisions. And I'm so grateful that I was able to work for a company early on that made long-term decisions, not a short-term decision based on what was going on today or emotions, but what was going to happen in the future, and doing the right thing, always doing the right thing.
And when you talk about always doing the right thing, one of the things, that's probably not proper English, but whatever, it's too late now, that you opened my eyes to, and it's also in reference to your quote about, we're always communicating with everything we do all day long, is how people are always watching us, perceiving what we do, making judgments based off of what we do, and then making their decisions on what to do with us, how to interact with us, whether or not to do business with us, work with us after that. And so for me, as a former investigator, I kind of had the idea of, anytime I'm working with somebody, I need to give a certain impression. I need to connect with them in a certain way. I need to be who they need me to be in order for them to feel comfortable telling me the truth. I got that. And from the color of my shirt to where I sat, all of those things could change depending on the situation. But going through your etiquette courses, and I'll give the people who know me a moment to chuckle once again, thinking about me going through etiquette courses. Going through your etiquette courses really opened my eyes to a lot of little things that I can do. Well, anybody can do, but I'm thinking from my lens now, that I can do in order to manage the proper impression, get the proper credibility. I mean, the list goes on. So I would love to turn this over to you and ask you, based on all of your experience. Oh, I'm going to ask a terrible question because now it's going to be like an unrelated compound question, but I just had a thought I don't want to escape. Please remind us where you got your training, because I believe I recall the name of the school, but I don't want to get it wrong, list the wrong family member name or something like that. So please remind us where you got your initial training and certification from, but then walk us through a few examples, if you would please, about why etiquette might sound unnecessary or maybe only for the privileged few, but really makes a significant difference. Proper etiquette in the proper situation makes a significant difference for all of us.
Course. Oh, now you just opened the whole door to my whole world. Here it goes. Well, I studied the Protocol School of Washington, D.C. That's where I was certified. And then I was also certified by Letitia Baldridge, who was Jackie Kennedy's chief of staff. So in her older years, in my younger years, I was able to study under her. She was a great. And so those certifications, you can't just become an etiquette expert and say, okay, I read a couple of books. Because what happens is you read a couple of books, both books will say something differently unless they've been certified. And so then everybody's on the same page. And the reason there are etiquette rules is because life is like a fine dance. What if we could all dance together without stepping on each other's toes? Wouldn't that be wonderful that we could all understand why we do things the way that we do? And 85% of our success in life truly is related to our soft skills. Only 15% are our technical skills. Now you may think, well, a doctor, I don't care if he has technical skills, or I don't care if he has social skills or not, it's his technical skills. Yes, it is. But I will tell you from experience, you want your doctor to have some social skills because you want to understand what in the world he just did to your loved one's body, what is going on with your own body, because you will change doctors just like that if he has a bad bedside manner. There's always someone else. So it doesn't matter who you are. You've got to have a great presence about you. And people say, well, you know what? I'm just not interested in that. Well, you better get interested in that because it's 85% across the board of success in life. And you know what? 68% of our clients will go somewhere else as a result of poor customer relations. And that is easy to do. We just need to coddle our customers and make them feel like they're special. Surely we can do that when we're in front of our customers because it takes a whole lot of time to go out and find a new one. Actually, it takes 5 times the amount of time and money to go out and get a new customer as it does to keep the old one. So we need to make sure that we look at those clients and build strong relationships. And I know, Mike, that you are so good at building strong relationships. From the moment I met you, you talked about all these relationships that you had since you were a young boy. And I've always remembered that, how loyal you are to customers and to your family. I mean, I feel like I know your family because of how dedicated you are. One great thing is that, there are the small things that make things big. So for example, looking people in the eyes are the window to the soul. I always say this because even yesterday, I pulled into I was having my car service. They're supposed to be number 1 in the nation. I pulled in, the guy walked over finally, I might say, to get my car while I'm sitting in the car. And he doesn't look, he put the window down and he says, why are you here? Never looked me in the eye, never smiled. I said, I have 11:30 appointment. What's your name? No building relationship, no. So what that told me is on the front end, they've got great salespeople, but they have got to work. Of course, by the time I left there, I am teaching their customer service manager in a very kind way about expectations of customers who pay a lot of money for cars. And so, my expectations were up here, but now they're down here. You've got a lot of work to do. Look at all of your customers. And so I gave him my little spiel in a very kind way, but it is
Didn't help
true.
yourself.
So I was helping him the best I could. And I didn't even charge for it. Of course, they got me on the front end for that, I'm sure. But the thing about it is we're always making an impression, no matter what we do. from the time we show up, our first impression has already been made. A lot of people say 5 seconds. Oh, it's in 1 second. The moment someone sees you, they've already determined what you're capable of doing, what I'm capable of doing just for the way that I'm dressed. And so while that might not be quite accurate, why do we want to have to unpack all that and try to represent ourselves? Because it takes a whole lot of tries to overcome that first impression. Some statistics say as much as 65 times to overcome that first impression where people think, oh, yeah, that's not really who that person is. And so I was saying, if you're walking in somewhere, you walk in like you know what you're talking about. And especially if you're going into a company, you better know that that receptionist runs the place. She is dictating what happens there, and you be kind to her or him, and you be nice, and you make that great first impression, because what's going to happen is whoever you're interviewing with, perhaps it's a new client, they're going to ask the receptionist, what did you think about the person? And they're going to give it. They're they're on their phone the entire time talking in the lobby, or they had to have something to drink, or they were high maintenance, or I don't know, I just didn't get a good vibe. You better get your good vibe together. And so it's very important, even riding up in the elevator. How many times have you ridden up in the elevator with a person that you were about to meet with, and you didn't even know that it was that person? So we have to make sure that our timing is perfect. I always say, if you are on time, you're late, you better be there a little bit early. And so that tells a lot about who we are. We never want to have to go in apologizing for anything at all, from the way we look to our timing, to anything, whether it is our resume, our portfolio, everything done in excellence. If you ever have to say, I'm sorry, we need to look and see, why are we saying that, so we never have to say that again. When we're going in somewhere, we don't just plop down somewhere and sit. We ask people, where would you like for me to sit? They will tell you then. If they ask you, do you want something to drink? Probably not, because again, that's just one more step for them. We're looking to see what we can do to make life easier for them. If we're building a relationship, we're looking around their office to say, oh, look, they are, Mike, who's your team? I should know this.
Football team?
Yes.
Well, this year, everybody will be much more happy that my football team is the Patriots as we cycle our way back down to the bottom.
Do you remember when Gabe was born? I couldn't even help myself.
I do.
I bought a little cowboy outfit.
Yep.
Because, like, I grew up in Dallas. I thought that the whole world cheered for Dallas until I was 20 years old. Like, why are all these people cheering for another team? I thought the whole world cheered for the Dallas Cowboys. So again, it's all about building relationships. But you can look around someone's office and you can say, oh, look at Mike's office. He's got all the Patriot. And so you can know, oh, don't say anything bad about the Patriots. Talk about the Patriots. Talk about his family. Oh, he's got all the pictures of his family. Oh, and so you can start building relationships by just asking a few questions and remembering. This is when we note in our head, oh, okay, yes, I need to remember these things, because next time I talk to Mike, then I can bring up the things that are near and dear to his heart. That's how we build a relationship. It's extremely important in life to remember, because that's how we make people feel special. I didn't know if you had switched over. I guess you just don't switch teams, do you? I don't know.
No, I mean, not if I want to go home and have holiday meals with my dad.
Exactly. Get kicked down the family will.
Yeah, I can't let that happen. You brought up a great point that I want to quickly double down on, which is the importance of listening and remembering. So even earlier this week, I was speaking at an event where there were some other speakers, and one of the speakers was talking about how important it is to be attentive when we listen, like look like you're actually listening. That is true. It's 100% true. It's also a complete waste of time if you're not listening for value that you can capture, retain, and use at another point to help achieve a goal or an outcome. So just like looking like you're listening isn't good enough. You're wasting everybody's time. And if you really want to convince somebody that you were listening, if you want to prove to them, build that trust, you've got to take something that you heard in one conversation and use it again later. And to your point, if it's something that's valuable or meaningful to them and doesn't necessarily have any importance to you, then it's even more beneficial. So when you talk about the listening piece of etiquette and being truly engaged with somebody, and what do they say? Be where your feet are and be present, and all these things, which are all true. But now you're not only letting somebody know that you're engaged, you're actually remaining engaged, capturing important information, retaining it, and then using it at the right time to help develop that relationship and prove that you did listen, you do care, because it does make them feel good. All of those things that you shared. And your point about the first impression was great too. You talked about it being 1 second. There's a couple of research studies that have showed it can be essentially as quick as 100 milliseconds. So, I mean, you're talking the blink of an eye. People are already assessing your trustworthiness, your intentions, your integrity, all of these things. And so, I'd heard things before, like, dress at the level or one level above the job you want or the audience that you're going to be with. I certainly have examples from my interrogation career where being overdressed or underdressed both hurt. So sometimes just finding like the right medium, depending on who I was talking to, was important. But I've heard you talk about too, like even the color of the clothes that you wear.
Oh.
And a funny story, I won't get into the whole story here because I don't want to disparage anybody. You remember the collars? So this is a Joy Weaver thing. So for me, I will not teach in a collar that has buttons on it, because after listening to you teach and hearing you talk about how the collars without the buttons are more professional than the collars with the buttons. Cool. I'll buy into that. That makes sense to me. I don't need a double blind peer review scientific study from 4 Ivy League universities to tell me that. That makes sense for my brain. So when I teach, I always make sure that I'm wearing I usually teach in a suit coat or sport coat. I make sure that I've got the collars with no buttons on them. I won't drag the audience through the story, but I recall you and I somewhere in Louisiana getting chewed out by a guy who swore we had it backwards. Well, you had it. I'm in your camp
Story
here.
of
So
my life. Yes, someone was to argue.
yeah, but
But
I don't know if you remember that, but he legit wanted to argue with you over that, which I guess told you all you needed to know about him to begin with. But so, I mean, the shirt collars is a little one, but what are some other like etiquette principles that we all should be applying every day to enhance the perception of ourselves and our communications?
So I will just take you through a little bitty brief etiquette session that you've already been through 10 times, but your audience has not. So we always, if someone hands us a name badge or name tag, we put it on the right and we put it up high so people can see our name. If they ask us to write it, we don't write it, we print it as largely as possible. So my name tag would say Joy Weaver and I would put it up high where people can see it. I wouldn't put it down low so they're looking at my chest. I put it up high. That way, when I shake hands with someone, my right shoulder comes forward, my left shoulder goes back. They can see my name and they can call my name in conversation. They see Joy Weaver. So they say, well, hello, Joy. And then the conversation starts. I see their name tag. Once you call somebody by their name, the relationship has begun. When we see a name, when we can see it, we can remember it typically. Now, if someone just says their name, sometimes it just goes right over our head. But when we can see it and then we can say it, then it's much easier to remember. There's an entire art to it, and we have to listen and we have to use it in conversation. I always say use their name back once, maybe twice, never 3 times. They'll think you're nuts. But here's the thing about it. The handshake. Their handshake is one of the first impressions. And so it needs to be a firm handshake, but not a bone crusher. It needs to be web to web. Web is right here. And so we connect web to web. And then we also people say, is it okay that I hug someone? Well, in all instances, know your audience. Is this a professional interview or is this your grandmother? Can you give a side hug? Maybe you haven't seen this gentleman in a while and used to work with him. A side hug is great. A side hug is fine. A big bear hug in professionalism, maybe not so much, but know your audience. You will know your audience. You don't just go grab somebody and hug them because you're overstimulated because you're about to interview with the job, for a job and you want it. So it is extremely important. And the way that you are dressed is 55% of your first impression. You have already made that impression by your mannerisms, by your voice, and of course, mainly by the way you're dressed. And I'll never forget. Well, 2 stories when we were traveling together. Okay, I don't know if you remember this one, but it was a group of men, and I think there were 2 or 3 women. And there was a gentleman that was a little bit older. He was sitting to my left. And as I presented, and he was dressed to the T. He had on a jacket, he had on a starched shirt, and those guys typically wore khakis and they had a polo. But this man, he had on these amazing lizard loafers, and he just looked like he smelled good. That's the way I always say it. His hair was back, and I'm okay, he's obviously the boss. He's obviously an upper management, and he's here to hear us speak, to check us out. Great. So every time I would refer to something, I would refer to him. Oh, yes. And I'm sure, and I would make note of him and include him because I knew he was the most important one. As it turns out, he was the new kid on the block. He just had not received his T-shirt and his polo and his khakis yet because he was brand new. But for me, I had already sized him up as he was the boss. And that's the power of dressing. He had outclassed the competition. He had done it all just by the way he was dressed. And so I always think of that story, and I've told it many times, how I had no idea, but I had already sized him up by the way that he was dressed. And so many stories that came out of, this is an embarrassment for me. I want to go ahead and tell it, talking about even the color. You mentioned that. And it made me think of my very first time that I was with this company that we're referring to. And I was so happy. I flew into Chattanooga. It's showtime. I am on. And I had bought this new dress. And I looked down and I thought, I bought a blue dress for a company whose logo is red and their competition is blue.
And everybody knows both of these companies.
And they are side by side. One's across the street. I had to endure that. I was mortified at myself. I could feel my hair sticking out. I just didn't even know how to overcome it. There was nothing to do except for plow through it. There's no apologies. There's no nothing. Just plow through it.
Yeah, just own it and go and have the quality of your presentation override the in this case, the blue dress. But I can make you feel a little bit better. So I've been doing work with them for a little. We both have been doing work for them separately for a little while before we started working together. And on one of my previous visits to a Baton Rouge facility, and let's give a quick shout out to our mutual friend Becky, who I certainly miss seeing on a regular basis.
Me too.
But Becky's phenomenal. And so I obviously knew that there were certain brands of refreshment that were not going to be allowed on premises, but some of the like smaller independent ones escaped me. So having come straight from the airport, I had an independent brand bottle of water that I had put on the podium as I was plugging my laptop in and getting the handouts. And this is a very large training space. And from across the room, in what is normally the nicest voice I'm going to hear all week, I hear like my angry mother, Michael, what the hell is wrong with you? She marches up front, swipes it off the podium, replaces it with another one, and looks at me like I just tried to run her dog off the road. Like it was, so I made a similar, if you will, with the same.
I did the same thing. If it makes you feel any better. And this is what happened to me. I'm up on the stage. Here I am. There's the podium and there's the water. That's the competition. All of a sudden, I see an arm that came in silence, swooped it away and replaced it with their DeSanti or whatever it was.
Oops.
Oops.
Speaking of faux pas, though, I think many of us, certainly myself included, occasionally create etiquette related faux pas unintentionally. We didn't do it on purpose, but just we didn't know the right thing to say, didn't know the right thing to wear, didn't know the right place to sit, didn't know the right thing to do. When we think about the average day-to-day business environment, what are some of the most common etiquette faux pas that you see people making on a regular basis?
Again, so many. I'm going to go back to the eye thing. The eyes. I see this all the time. People are talking to others and they're looking over their head at the TV, or they're looking around to see who might be more important than the person that they're talking to. There is no one more important than the person that you're talking to. This is when you become the rainmaker in life, when you can look at somebody in the eye, not a stare down, but when you can build a relationship by looking people in the eyes. Okay, so I'm going to get off of that. It's very important. The dress is very important. I'm going to say, if you can look down and see cleavage, oh, guess what? Everyone else can too. And that's okay. Like, if that's your thing, but I'm just telling you, so many companies ask, I'll say, are there any other things that you want me to add in? Yes. Would you please tell the women to quit showing so much cleavage? Really? Why don't you tell them that? You're in HR. Well, could you just add that in? Yes. Okay, I will. But again, how crazy is that? Now, the dress has gotten so casual that it does not take much to outclass the competition. You can just do a little and you look like, again, that you own the company. So I say, who knows what Casual Friday looks like? We were already so casual and now we're ultra casual. So step it up a little bit. And I'm telling you, your career will skyrocket if you will dress up. Dress up a little. I'm not even talking about high heels. I'm not talking about spending all your money. I'm just talking about look good. Look good. Don't wear jeans every day. Never, ever wear flip-flops to work. I don't care if it's okay. And it's not really even okay to show your toes. Be professional in all that you do. Think about how you can set the example of being in excellence. Think about that owner who says, do I want that person working for my company? Could I send that person out to the Chamber of Commerce to get business? Could I trust them enough to go out and get business? Do they know what they're doing? Could they sit down at a table and remember the BMWs of the table, bread on the left, meal in the middle, and water on the right? Could they hold up their hands, a little bitty B and a little bitty D, bread and drink, and remember which one's theirs and not drink out of somebody else's cup? Would they know what to do with their napkin that they're speaking to the wait staff? Whatever they're doing with their napkin, they're speaking to the wait staff. What about their utensils? Would they be able to use their utensils and speak to the wait staff? Or would they embarrass the entire company by not even knowing the basics? So etiquette gets a bad rap because, well, it's kind of cheesy. It's etiquette. Oh, no. It is hardcore soft skills. It's hardcore soft skills. People are looking to see what you know. And most of the people at that table, they don't know. They'll be looking at you and they'll be waiting on you to see what you're doing. And I'm so proud of you, Mike. You've told me so many times, I got there, I knew what I was doing. I have that same story. We're not born with this information. We go out, we glean the information, and then we use it to empower our careers.
And you talked about the meals really quick. So people who know me a little bit know that, especially when I'm on the road, I like to use other people for my own entertainment in ways that they might not realize, but it's how I get through my day because I can't be home with my family. So this is how I'm going to do it. So I was at this event earlier this week at a location that I wouldn't normally find myself, with wait staff that was very attentive. And having recalled what you taught about the silverware, and I guess after this, you should probably tell everybody, I saw out of the corner of my eye the staff start to come over as I was getting close to the end of my meal. And so, because this is how I entertain myself, because I saw them coming, I put the silverware down in one position and I watched this gentleman stop and start walking back. Now, to be honest, I've got like maybe a bite and a half of food left, and I honestly wasn't 100% convinced I was going to eat it. But now I just can't like turn the silverware. I've got to finish the food. So I finished the food. I put the silverware back down at the top of the plate, knife and fork together. Dude comes right over. I will take that for you, sir. Picks it up and walks away. So the gift of Joy Weaver's teachings continues to give to me in all kinds of random moments for personal entertainment. Well, let's just, without going into a whole lot of detail, if people are wondering, wait a minute, if I'm in a particular style of restaurant, I mean, your everyday casual dining, it's not going to make a difference. But if people are at a corporate event, if they're at a charity, a fundraising dinner, if they're out at a specific spot with a client, then yeah, how you handle and where you put your silverware can make a big difference. So people don't think I'm entirely crazy or crazier than they already did. Can you please walk them through that?
Sure. Thank you. All right. So once you, and again, I think that this would be worth noting that my first client was the world's largest construction firm. They wanted me to take it from step one. How do you make a proper introduction? Very important. You're making an introduction. We need to know how to make a proper, whose name is said first? Well, the most important person's name said first. Who is that? Who is it? Maybe it's me. I don't know. No, it's probably not. It's the person who is the head of the company. So let's say that you have the president there. You would say the president's name first, Mr. President, or you would say, John Doe, I would like to introduce, and then maybe you have a new employee, give their name. And then you could say, Susie Q is in charge of purchasing and merchandising, and John is our president. So you make that connection, you walk away that way that they can start to build that relationship. Okay, now these are the basics. Another thing that the construction company says is we don't even know how to get into the building properly and get seated because you know what? We're all in the holy huddle talking about what's going on outside, they're all beating on board somewhere. Oh, did you hear about this? They're all talking together. When you go to a networking event, it's called networking for a reason. You're supposed to go out and get business. Whether you're at the gym, whether you're at a wedding, no matter where you are at, and especially if you're at the Chamber of Commerce, you need to be on your best behavior in everywhere because you represent the company, you represent yourself, you represent your family, and you need to know what you're doing. You need to be as polished as possible. But let's say that you're at that Chamber of Commerce meeting. So you go in, let's say that you are walking with a potential client and you're going through a revolving door. You get to that revolving door, you push for your client or you push for your wife. You don't stick them in there and have them push the revolving door. I don't even know if they have revolving doors anymore. They used to.
I had to walk through one the last 2 days.
I did too. But I was like, hey, I haven't seen one of these in a while. So those are like the smallest things. But once you get out to that table, and again, you get out of the holy huddle, quit talking about what's going on in your own company. You have a lot of time to talk about that for the next 100 years. What you can do is walk up to your table. Always remember, life is like a fine dance. You should be able to get in on the left and you get out on the right. Think about everyone at that table getting in on the left and getting out on the right. We're not stepping on each other's toes. We're not, oh, sorry, excuse me. Oh, pardon. Oh, well. And so you pull out your chair, you scoot up about one hand length between you and the table. That way you don't have to try to lean over and get your food. And then once you have your plate in front of you, you will see your napkin. Immediately take your napkin and put it in your plate. If you're at someone's home, you're watching the host. The host will get his or hers napkin first. We're watching the host. But at an event like the Chamber of Commerce, you just get your napkin, put it in your lap with the fold toward you. You scoot up. Of course, we know that our drink is always, whatever's wet, that's ours. It's the BMW, whatever's wet is on the right-hand side. So that is our water. That's our tea. That's our coffee. Don't turn over your coffee cup because it's just considered tacky. It's just considered tacky. And let me say, by the way, if you do get up, let's say you excuse yourself, you don't say, I'm going to the bathroom, I'm coming back. You just simply excuse yourself. You get up to the right, you push your chair in. That's when I say you can see someone that has a touch of class. They always push their chair back into the table. So when you come back, you would get in on the right-hand side, you get out on the left, you have a handbag, you put it to your right because you'll be getting out on the right. And then you always carry your handbag on your left. And I know you probably this because I remember you telling me once that you were telling Brooke all about the handbag etiquette. Okay. So remember,
That's how I carry my hand.
of course, your MERS. I get it. Okay, so you're working from the outside in with your utensils. So your spoon and your knife, they always go together. They're a little couple, and they're on the right. And on the left would be your forks. Up at the top, you've got a dessert fork and a dessert spoon. Your salt and pepper are always passed together, never over the top. But you put your hands around their sides and you pass them to one person. You don't like stretch over and pass them to someone. You put them down in front of the person right beside you, and then they will pass them on. We always try to pass to the right. So we're passing to the right. You take a piece of bread, you put it on your bread plate, and then you start passing it to the right. Then you get a little dab of butter and you put it on your bread plate. And you pull one bite at a time and you butter that one little bite at a time. You know, like slather it on and pull it out like an apple, pull it out of your mouth like an apple. It's just one bite at a time. And what you talked about, the silent service codes for your utensils. So if you had, depends on how you eat, you could eat the continental style or the American style. And in my Socially Savvy book, which I will show you, you talk about that, or I talk about that, and on page 94, you have the setup. And so you will never have to wonder at Thanksgiving again how to set your table. You can actually go to my Facebook page, which is Socially Savvy, and then also on X and on Instagram, and you can get all kinds of tips, all these tips that make you feel more comfortable, more confident wherever you find yourself. And so again, that final service code for your utensils is laying your knife and your fork straight. I say with the tines up at 10, and you are laying the handle down on the 4. That way they can come in, they being the wait staff. This is the plate. They put their hand under, they clasp over the utensils, pick your plate up and take it away. Very important, all of these things. But you were talking about faux pas. What are some of the biggest faux pas? Toothpicks. Toothpicks are some big faux pas. We don't go around sucking on our teeth or trying to get something out of our teeth in front of people with our fingers. It's just considered a faux pas. Writing thank you notes are still important. It's extremely important. It says, look what I can do. I can go a step further than everybody else. You want to get the job? 2 or 3 people in line, you get a thank you note from you, lands on their desk. They go, really? They took enough time to write a thank you note. They're hired. Or you get the client or whatever it might be. So many things, getting there early if you're with a client to pay for the meal. Don't be fighting over the ticket. It's already paid for. It's already paid for. Let them know you mean business, and you're there because you mean business and you know what you're doing.
And it does make such a huge difference. It is a little bit situational sometimes, not taking away from anything that you said, but like even thinking about my family. I'm from New England. My wife is from Alabama. There's some different etiquette expectations. As you've seen, and I've seen traveling internationally, there's some different etiquette expectations. And also even a bit industry from industry. I love your construction story. Well, what does etiquette have to do with construction? Actually, a whole lot. Now, how that etiquette matters in a boardroom, how that etiquette matters in a social setting, and how that etiquette matters on the job site might be different, but it still matters. We still have those expectations. And for me, one of the things that I appreciated the most, because I find myself in so many different situations, maybe I'm comfortable in them, maybe I'm not, but hopefully nobody ever knows, is because of the time that I've spent with you and because of seeing you teach so many times, now I'm able to be a bit more comfortable and a bit more relaxed and less worried about being judged. because I think a lot of times for all of us, when we find ourselves in situations that aren't normal for us, that we're uncomfortable in, a lot of that discomfort isn't people are watching, it's people are judging. And I don't want them to judge me unfavorably or incorrectly. And I would love to stand here and say, well, that's not true. Human beings aren't judging. They're judging all the time. It's an unfortunate reality. That is what they're doing. So it certainly helps me to be, I guess you could say, even more of a chameleon sometimes by being able to do and say the right thing at the right time for the right audience. And I'm happy that you held up your book there, because it's literally broken down chapter by chapter, situation by situation. So it's literally broken down to, am I a man in this situation? Am I a woman in this situation? Is this a business situation? Is this a social situation? Am I in a restaurant? Am I in a house? So it's literally broken all the way down. So for somebody who's starting to think, well, wait a minute, if Joy could help Mike Reddington, then what could she do for me? Literally, you can just flip to the page. It's the way you put the book together and say, okay, this is what I need to know for tonight, or this is what I need to know for this event. I know for me, I kind of have my default approach. If I find myself in a situation where I really do feel uncomfortable, but what advice do you have for people if they find themselves in a novel situation, or maybe with a new group of people? Maybe it's a surprise. They didn't actually have a lot of time to prepare for it. If they find themselves in a situation like that, how do you suggest they begin to navigate the situation in order to demonstrate the proper etiquette while educating themselves simultaneously?
So you're talking about maybe walking into a networking situation, they didn't even know they were going there, just boom, there they are.
Yeah.
So the beautiful part about it is, and I've watched you for a long time, and I love this about you, Mike, you know your audience. So if someone's dressed up, you're not intimidated by that. Hey, you could walk into any situation and create a conversation literally to a fence post, because that's who you are. You are able to communicate. You're not intimidated. And that's the way that we should be. People don't care. They want to hear you talk about them. So much of the world is, well, it's about me, me, me. I'm going to quit talking about me. And now let me hear you talk about me. And that is not the way that it works. The way that it works is, wow, I really like that, whatever it is. That shirt, those shoes, I like that, your jewelry, whatever it might be. That creates a conversation, because people are like, really? And then the conversation starts. Yes, I got this when I was traveling to Paris. Paris, I love Paris. That's how the conversation starts, whatever it might be. And that's how we start getting to know people. The more we can talk about them, the more they love us. And so that's really all it boils down to, building that relationship. And it's all about them. It's all about them.
Yeah, I love that. Talking about them, asking about them. The other technique that I'll use is I will try to put them in the position of expertise or experience.
Yeah.
So when in doubt, I will ask them for help. I'll ask them for their opinion. I'll ask them for their advice. I'll ask them for something that elevates them over me in the conversation, because now they're going to drop their guard. They're going to feel important. Their ego is going to be satisfied. And whatever they say next, we can use. So now we can start teasing out the conversation. And sometimes, and you even mentioned networking events or social events, it might be kind of a setup move where I think I've identified the person I need to talk to. I don't have a natural entry point here. So I'll go ask them a question that makes them the expert. Then I'll walk away, and then I'll come back. And now when I come back, I'm a known face. There's experience. I've already elevated them in our budding relationship here. And now I've got a bit of an entree I can use to start moving towards what I want.
So good, Mike. I mean, you are like the best interrogator, because you've already built that relationship. Oh, we're friends now. See, you can tell me anything. That is a gift. That's a gifting. And another tip is, along the lines, and I probably learned this from you actually, don't try to up their story. I've heard you say that. Don't try to up their story. When you get in that conversation, it's all about them, making them feel good, making them feel like they're the expert. Don't try to say, oh yeah, you went to Paris? Well, guess what? I stayed at the Ritz and went to the top of the Eiffel Tower. Did you do that? That's how some people thrive, is to up the story. And we cannot be that person. I will tell you, we have to know our audience, but as speakers, we have to know just some of the basics. But we think that everybody knows this. And we talk about judging. Some of the biggest speakers in the world, platforms, you see them on the news, whatever, they can't even get the I's and the me's right. You know what I'm talking about? When we say I and me, and they say the wrong, they'll say, Susie invited Mike and I to go to the party. Well, it's Mike and me. And so it would be basics like that companies say, okay, we got to work one-on-one just with our executives just to get the vernacular corrected. And oh gosh, the list on that goes on and on with just the basics. So I'm not talking about double backflips. I'm talking about the basic hardcore soft skills that says, oh yeah, we can outclass the competition if we can just get the basics right.
Again, the basics are going to be what most people would recognize, what most people would acknowledge, what most people would appreciate. And honestly, and I would change the word from basics to fundamentals, because they really are fundamental components of communication. If there's nothing really basic about them, I guess, like on an etiquette flow chart, they might be some of the building blocks, so they're more basic that way, but they're not basic. They're the fundamental components of proper etiquette protocol in these conversations and interactions. But to a larger degree, they'll also be what helps differentiate you, the listener, the audience, from your competition, from everybody else. And they can be little, they can be subtle. Even if your target customer or your target employer or whoever your audience is, even if they can't put their finger on it, they know it feels different. They know the experience is different. It's more professional. It's more respectful. It's more thoughtful. It's more complete. It's doing those extra little things that create big things that you mentioned earlier. It's doing those extra little things that help fortify that relationship, that help create unexpected opportunities. And yes, I'm sure, you mentioned things being more casual now than they were previously, and dress codes in offices have changed, and for meetings have changed. And now, honestly, sometimes I have to ask before I go to an event, is this an event that I'm wearing a suit, or is this an event that I'm wearing a nice pair of jeans and a sport coat? Because sometimes I won't go less than that, but depending on the event, like that actually matters. So it's just a little bit different now. But when we talk about your certification, like just to give people a frame of reference, Jackie Kennedy's chief of staff, like, let's just think about that for a second. Give me a list of people in the world where etiquette played a greater role in their job and where they faced more scrutiny for the nuances of their etiquette than Jackie Kennedy's chief of staff. Like, let's just put that in perspective for a moment. So to have that background, to have that certification, to have it down to those details, yeah, okay, maybe in 2024, some of those things have changed a little bit, and from situation to situation, they don't always matter, but it's often hard to be too polite.
Right.
And if we're going to be more polite than everybody else, if the risk is I don't want to be too polite, that's a risk I'd be willing to take. I'd be willing to risk being too polite as opposed to being too unprofessional. So with that context as a backdrop, I know you mentioned your book. I'm going to have the link in the show notes. You mentioned some of your social media handles. For the people that are listening to this, again, thinking, well, if she could help Mike Reddington, there's got to be hope for me. And they want to connect with you. They want to learn more. Maybe they want to have you at one of their events. Where can people go to connect with you and learn more?
Please go to my website. You will love my website. It is justaskjoy.com. Justaskjoy.com. You will see a link that says speaking. You click on it, will roll down, and you can go to build my own. You can build your own. You have a list of my whole brain, everything that I know, from first impressions to tech savvy. Like, what do we do? This phone can ruin everything. It can be our best friend. It can be our worst enemy, but we have to know what to do with it, when to put it away, what to do. Because if I am talking to you and I have this in my hand on my lap, There's still something in between us, and here it is. I need to put it completely way upside down, out of sight, out of mind if I'm building a relationship. So tech etiquette, dining, and customer service, every bit of this. I was a customer service expert before I became an etiquette expert. So all of this, as you said earlier, is like building a beautiful mosaic. You are putting all the fundamentals together to make a beautiful mosaic picture of yourself. And I love something that you referred to. You said, this is really not about me. This is about someone feeling comfortable around me and saying, there's just something unique and different. I just feel comfortable. I feel very special around this person. That's what it's all about. It's never about calling someone else out and saying, you mean you don't know the difference between I and me? You don't know the difference between your bread plate and their bread plate, or you picked up the wrong foot. That would be the worst faux pas that a person could possibly make, is calling someone else out on their bad manners. The worst. And so whatever we do, we make other people feel comfortable in their worst moment. We step in and we act as if they are right. I will never forget. It was one of the presidents. I can't remember right now off the top of my head. One of the heads of state from another country thought that it was when dipping your fingers, they would combine, you would dip your fingers in the bowl and the person from the other culture, the other country, drank that bowl of water, dirty water. What did the president do? The same thing. That's a touch of class. When you can make other people feel special and not make them feel embarrassed.
Amen. If literally you're talking about helping people build relationships publicly, build customer relationships publicly, manage our own image publicly. But what you just said, help people feel comfortable at their lowest moments or their worst moments, is exactly how you get someone to tell the truth in an interrogation.
Oh,
It's exactly how you get an employee to commit to changing their behavior. It's exactly how you build a solid customer relationship over time, because you bailed her out in an embarrassing moment. Now you've earned trust that transcends price issues and cost issues and supply chain issues and all of these other things. So to wrap it up with that, if we can go out of our way to avoid other people feeling embarrassed, because we understand the proper social protocols in the beginning, and we can either educate them through our education or help cover for them if necessary, pick them up metaphorically. Amen. I had a couple other questions I was going to ask, but we're going out on that one because
okay.
that's the perfect line to wrap this up on. Joy, it is always so great to see you. It has been way too long. Thank you for carving out the time to talk with us today. This was a fantastic conversation. I really appreciate it.
Mike, thank you so much. It's so great to see you again. I'm so proud of all that you're doing. Keep running your race. You're doing a great job.
I appreciate it. And you as well. I watch what you post online. Really excited to keep up with you. So please stay safe, take care of yourself. And I was in Texas earlier this year, but nowhere near you. So hopefully the next time I'm in Texas, we'll have a chance to see each other.
It's such a big place. Come on.
Take care. Be safe. We'll see you soon.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Joy. It's always great to see you, talk with you, and learn from you. Thank you for all that you shared today. And thank you for continuously trying to help me polish my skills, despite all the resistance that you might run into every time. I really appreciate it. Thank you so much. I promise I'm listening, I'm learning, and I'm trying. And I hope everybody else took some great notes and idea from that conversation that you can apply in your professional and personal lives as well. Joy, you made so many great points. I like how you said life is like a fine dance. I'm still clearly learning the steps, but you're right. Life is like a fine dance. And it is so important. Again, truer words may never have been spoken, that we make people feel comfortable in their worst moments. If we want them to share information, if we want them to change their behavior, if we want them to bond with us, that is so true. And just the simple thought that calling people by their name can help start relationships is spot on and so important for all of us. Joy, thank you so much. And again, thank you to everybody that took the time to listen to that conversation. We truly appreciate it. Before we head out, let's thank our sponsors one more time. Humantel. Please head over to humantel.com. That's where you can begin to develop the skill set to understand what people are likely thinking and feeling at any moment by evaluating shifts in their facial expressions and nonverbal communication for signs of emotional changes. Read their research, check out their articles, choose the training that's right for you, and enter the code Inquasive25 for 25% off your training. I've done it all. I highly recommend it. It's over at humantel.com. Professional interviewers, head over to certifiedinterviewer.com. Learn how you can join the association, learn how you can contribute to the International Association of Interviewers, learn different research tools, resources that are available, the online and in-person education, all that and more. That's also where you can get all your questions answered about the Certified Forensic Interviewer designation. How do you qualify? How do you study and pass the exam? How do you maintain the designation? What could it mean for your career? All the information you need to know about the Certified Forensic Interviewer designation is right there at certifiedinterviewer.com. And while you're online, please head over to inquasive.com. That's where you can learn more about the training programs our clients ask us to custom facilitate for their senior leaders, business development teams, negotiators, HR teams, and more to teach them the skills, perspectives, and techniques necessary for encouraging people to share sensitive information under vulnerable circumstances in the face of consequences, to unlock hidden value in all of our high-impact business and personal conversations. All that and more at inquasive.com. One last time, thank you all for being here again. We truly appreciate it. Please, before you go, like the show, share the show, subscribe to the show, send us your feedback. We would love to hear it. Thank you. Stay safe. Take care of each other. We'll see you next time.